Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining. Welcome to tonight's show. Tonight is going to be another episode of Do All Witches Think the Same? Which we already have ideas about that, of course. But I would love for my wonderful, beautiful, talented, charismatic, intelligent guests to go ahead and introduce themselves. So whoever wants to take it away and, introduce yourself, plug your social medias, tell them a little bit about who you are in case they missed the last one.
I'll go first then. Hi, I'm Lady Belladonna Leveaux. I'm the matriarch of the Aquarian Tabernacle Church, and my website is belladonnaleveaux.com. But you can probably find more information at atcwicca.org. I also am I'm Dean Emeritus. I just stepped down as Dean from Woolstenstein Theological Seminary, which is wiccanseminary.edu. That is the only degree-granting college of Wicca in the United States. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for joining.
I'll go. Hi, I'm the Nerdy Warlock, and you can find me here on YouTube making videos about mythology, folklore, and general odd things that catch my interest. And you can find me on Facebook, where you can book a reading with me. I particularly love OM readings, but I can also do runes, tarot, whatever you want. Check me out there. Check me out here. Check me out everywhere.
Cool. Thanks for joining.
Hi, I'm Orly Stewart. I am an artist and an author, and I'm really interested in incorporating alien technology, alien spirituality, along with the technologies from classical grimoires and ceremonial magic. I have a lot of experience doing ritual magic and studying these grimoires and adapting it into contemporary culture. And I'm also a psychic medium and tarot reader as well.
And I'm Reburian. I'm a hedge witch, would might be the easiest way to describe it. Devotee of Santissima Morte. My practice draws upon both Thelema as well as traditional European witchcraft, as well as New World witchcraft. You can find me on social media as Reburian on Facebook, YouTube, and also Reburian.com, where I offer my services and readings.
Awesome. Right on. Well, thank you guys all for joining. So to talk a little bit about how this live stream is going to go. So in case you missed our last show last month, so far we've been doing this every month, and I hope to continue doing so because it is so much fun. So how this works is I have a list of topics, and I will be asking the guests basically if they agree or disagree, right? So the show is Do All Witches Think the Same? Sometimes, believe it or not, all witches on this show do actually think the same, regardless of what denomination or background that you come from. Last month's show, I think we agreed more than we disagreed. So that was interesting. But sometimes we do disagree. So how this will work is I will be asking a question for the witches here on the stream. And it'll be less of a question, actually, and more of a statement. And if they agree with the statement, then they will if they disagree with the question, they'll turn their camera off. And then they'll come back after all the agreeers talk. Okay. So, that's how this is going to work. And for tonight on my channel, for those of you who watch my channel, you know that I vlog and I talk a lot about Sehir, an Arabian style conjure. And I think that today, especially, April 13th of 2021, today starts Ramadan. So Ramadan has kind of influenced some of these statements or some of these questions. And I'm really excited to talk to you guys and talk to the guests today about some of these statements, because I think that, I don't know, I think that we probably have a lot of similarities with some of the practices of Ramadan, and I have them listed here, and it'll just be interesting to see what you guys have to say. So, okay, are we ready? Okay, so the first statement, and I think per it being the holy month of Ramadan, and for everybody watching who is fasting right now or breaking their fast, at least it's sunset here where I am. So if you're breaking your fast right now, like Ramadan Mubarak, like blessings upon you. And yeah, I know that I have a lot of followers and viewers here on the channel who do practice Islam. So assalamu alaikum, you know, hala hala shadiq, hala hala shadika. Welcome, welcome. Let's get right into this blasphemy. Okay, so the first statement, is fasting is a part of my practice. Okay, so agreeers, you want to talk about why fasting is a part of your practice? Whoever wants to go first.
I guess you can go. You want me to go first? Yeah, fasting's been a part of my practice for a very long time. And when I was a teenager, I got very interested in Buddhism and the Vedic wisdoms. Fasting, of course, plays a large part in that. And then even if you look at like fairy lore and stuff, like these fairy encounters with fairy seers, and the fairies are describing a very particular diet for the seer to follow in order to be able to hear them and see them and communicate with them clearly. And it's the exact same as like the yogi diet that you find that's vegetarian. There's no eggs, no cheese, no dairy, none of that. And from experiences between doing, are we still there? Okay, we're still there. Good. And yeah, from experiences with using that, and then or even just like doing basic like a Greek style fast that you would find, or like with Ramadan, where you fast from sunset to sundown. It really does help to like purge a lot of like the toxic material that we build up in ourselves from our diet or environment, and it really does, I find, help make things more clear and easy to communicate with spirits. And also, as a matter of devotion and paying for your work, nothing's ever free. So by fasting, you're showing your devotion to the work itself.
I don't mean to interrupt, but Jasmine, we're getting some feedback from your mic. Please go ahead, Orly.
Oh, sorry about that.
No worries. Thanks, Belladonna. So, yeah, I totally resonate with that, Yuri. And in my practice, I've done a lot of experiments with the Ars Notoria from the Leveaux, which is essentially a manuscript where it has various prayers and magical diagrams that you look at, and they're designed to help you to become adept in various arts and sciences. And so through this process, you are supposed to fast, not just from eating, but all the other things that we fast from, because typically with fasting, people often just think it's eating, but it pertains to many other factors, and like just how you're carrying yourself, all the various things you do. And it really does have a great impact on you to become more sensitive than once you've cleared yourself out of everything to what energies you then bring into you.
Okay, so I agree with all of that. I definitely incorporate fasting into my practice. First of all, you have to do a 30-day fast to initiate into my tradition. It's a tiered fast. You don't go 30 days without food, but it's about monitoring what you bring into your body energetically so that you can be aware of what you're putting out energetically. But also, say if you want to talk to a tree, the practice is you sit with the tree, you drink a tea from the tree, like its bark and stuff. It's mostly water, but you absorb some of the essence into the tree, not in a poisonous amount, but a little bit, so that you can take in the essence of the tree. And after about 3 days, because trees move really slow, you start to hear the tree and the energy of the tree. And you can't really achieve that kind of communication without the process. There's also you don't know what food issues you have until you go without food. And there's a freeing effect of, once you get over oh my God, I'm hungry, I'm going to die, and know that you're not going to die because you're hungry, it stops having power over you. And so you take your power back from your food issues that you don't know that you have because you just indulge yourself. So I think there are a lot of different reasons why you fast. I was also raised Mormon, so we'd fast once a month anyway. And I found that when you have a spiritual fast and you dedicate your meals to the fast, to your spiritual offering, and you know, there's a bit of suffering in there, there's a lot of rewards because it's a bigger ask. You're asking in a larger way. If you're going without food, then spirit just pays more attention. I don't think it's like a requirement in order to have a spiritual life, but I do think that it's a deepening and it's a level of attainment that you cannot really reach in other ways. And I also agree with, you know, having certain kinds of diets bring forth certain kinds of experiences, like Yuri was talking about with the faith.
Okay, so the disagreeer. Why is fasting not a part of our practice?
It's not a fancy answer. It's just not. It's not something that's ever entered into like my realm, into my space. Like, I'm not against it, and I would definitely try it. But it's just something I've never done. It's never caught my interest. It's just never entered my ether. So it's just not a part of my path because of that.
So for those of you just now tuning in, this is the Do All Witches Think the Same? We did this the past 2 months. We had a lot of fun. Tonight, I've kind of themed the show a little bit after the holy month of Ramadan Marhakbak. Thank you all for joining. And I just want to talk about some of the tenets of Ramadan, because I think that people like to put people of religious groups in these little boxes, and they like to make people think like, okay, like, you know, oh, you believe this, so you practice this, and you believe that, so you practice that. But I think the really interesting thing about witches is that there's much more of a melting pot and a mix. So with Ramadan, the holy month starting now, and on my channel talking about Serhia Arabian conjure style practice, I wanted to kind of theme this show after Ramadan. So we talked about fasting. And as a Muslim, when you fast during Ramadan, you know, depending on how true you kind of take it, you basically do not eat at all from, you know, sunrise to sunset. And, you know, that might also mean not drinking water, not using chapstick, not engaging in adult activities while the sun is up. But you do eat. I think there's a big misconception from people outside of the Islamic community, or outside of the idea of fasting. I think people think that during Ramadan, like, you don't eat at all. And like, Ramadan lasts for 30 days. So yes, people are eating, but you eat at night. And normally there's like big parties, big haflas at nighttime, and like special foods that are made because kind of like what Bella was saying, like when you fast for so long, it's like it makes it so much more meaningful and so much more important when you are able to break your fast. So, okay. Anyway, the next statement for the show. I will sacrifice my comfort in my practice. I will sacrifice my comfort for my practice. We all agree? Hey, we all agree. How cool is that?
Thou must suffer to learn. I don't know what else to say.
So go ahead. Take it away. Take it away. Take it away.
So yeah, that's one of the things we talk about is that the path is not for the weak hearted or for those who lack courage. It's one of the things we ask. Are you willing to suffer to learn? Because I mean, you walking into the darkness, you might bump into stuff. I don't know how else to. You cannot learn things of great value without payment. The gods don't take money, so they take it out of other places. Best to direct that energy so they don't choose for you.
So true. That is so true. 100% agree. Everything you just said, cosign. I mean, seriously, how could you not, I mean, I know some people might not agree with this, but how could you not agree with this? By getting out of your comfort zone, that's how you grow, be it magical or mundane. That's how we grow as human beings. So I don't understand how or why someone would want to stay in a bubble and not get anywhere and not grow and not learn and work with different spirits and gods. And that's how you grow. The restriction of comfort is the grounds for the growth of your magical practice, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So my magical learning was very much enmeshed in Thelema. And so a huge aspect of it is what Crowley writes about as these ordeals. You have to go through these ordeals in order to learn, in order to grow. And that's important in the same sense as like meditation, for example. Meditation is not easy. You have to push yourself into these situations where you're going to train yourself spiritually so you become better. Just like working out will make you stronger, you have to go through some sort of effort to make yourself better. Now, that doesn't mean that everything should be constant suffering. If it's constant suffering, you probably are doing something on the wrong path for you, because it shouldn't just be suffering, but you're gonna have these things come up that help you to evolve and to become a person that's more at one with the forces of the universe, because there is so much suffering in this universe and in our reality, in our world. And you're going to have to go through that to understand the pain that the world is going through as well, to connect with it and to know it.
Exactly. And like it's like it says in the Book of the Law, the word of sin is restriction, and that compassion is the virtue or the vice of kings. And in order to get that compassion, you have to suffer yourself. You have to suffer yourself. And then, you know, if you're restricting yourself to not feel any suffering, then obviously, well, you're committing the chief Hellenic sin, I guess you could say. You know, and again, like everyone else has said, that suffering really pushes you, and you dance. You learn more when you dance on the edge than when you sit back in camp.
So, okay, to take this question, I think to the next. Yes.
Well, I want to just add on to that is that suffering is a choice. Giving up your comfort and gladly is a choice. Suffering, choosing to suffer, yes, I totally agree with what Yuri said, but I just want to add in there that suffering is a choice. And you can choose to walk the path joyfully, or you can choose to be upset about it kicking your ass. Like you can go to a karate or a workout and be happy and work yourself to death, or you can go and be like, oh God, oh God. It's the same workout. You're going to get more out of it when you're joyful. So when you push yourself out of your comfort zone and you suffer and you're miserable for it, I think that takes away from the joy. Even though the price you're paying is the same, your choice about it, whether you're joyfully giving it up for spiritual knowledge, or if you're begrudgingly giving it up, that colors the outcome.
So I would like to take this aspect like another step further, and I would like to hear from you guys. Like when we talk about sacrifice, when we talk about getting outside of our comfort zone, when we talk about, you know, giving up our comforts, like I think that different people, like what comfort is different. So like what your comfort is versus what my comfort is isn't necessarily the same. So kind of like how Catholics celebrate Lent, like maybe you're giving up soda for Lent, but like I don't even drink soda, right? So like to me, soda's not even a comfort. So if I gave up soda for Lent, I'm not really making a sacrifice because I don't really drink soda. However, like giving up other vices might be more of a sacrifice for me. So I think talking about being willing to sacrifice your comfort for your practice, I would like to hear from the three of you as to what does that actually mean? How do you sacrifice your comfort for your practice? When have you made yourself purposely uncomfortable for your spirituality?
Well, I will tell you that I won't give up bathing. Giving up grooming is straight out. But food, and I also don't give up like medicines. but yeah, giving up cigarettes wouldn't mean nothing to me because I don't smoke. But
well, I mean, in my own practice, like for like giving up a comfort, or like, you know, the one thing, the first time I guess you could say I achieved a sabbatic flight without using a flying ointment. What I did is I went out to a hilltop where, you know, out in the wilderness, stripped down naked, invoked the devil, and then just lay down staring at the sky, where you can't move and look at anything else, just the sky. And the goal is that like it essentially rips you out of your body so you can fly to the Sabbath. And you know, that's very, very, like, you feel insects crawling all over you, hear things all around you that may or may not be people or animals, you know what. And you know, it's a very discomforting, disorienting situation, but then you learn how to fly from that. So
yeah, I've done similar practices when it comes to meditation, of putting myself through some sort of extreme. I mean, of course, there are occult initiations, which I'm not going to break any oaths, but those typically go through some sort of willing, putting yourself through some sort of spiritual hazing, as it were, where you don't know what's going to happen to you. You know, it's something scary is probably going to happen. You don't know what it will be. So that's one aspect I've definitely done. But something just akin to kind of what you've done is, there was a time when I was looking after some human skeletal parts that a person that I knew had back when I lived in Canada. And I would sit and meditate with the skull in my hands and lap and just before me, which was very difficult for me at first because I had never encountered that kind of energy before. And through that, I guess we could call it tantric immersion into something that I knew would be scary for me, helped me to overcome it and grow through that, like, suffering, as it were.
So I don't know how much I can actually say on a YouTube live. about this without it being like, I don't know, provocative or inappropriate, I guess. But I guess I'll just say that ways that I kind of push myself past my comfort zone for my practice is kind of jumping off what you said, Orly and Yuri. Like, I will kind of put myself into spaces that incite fear in me sometimes so that I can overcome that fear. So like being in the wild, being up in a high space, being underwater. I've done that a lot. And then there's a couple of other things, but again, like, I don't know what I could say. But it involves definitely like pain for me. And I won't elaborate because, like I said, I don't know what I can say. But pain and like the thresholds of pain are very big for me in terms of like inducing that altered state of consciousness. So pushing myself to the limits of like personal pain are really big in my practice for me personally.
I think for me, I give up like time and energy and whatever I'm sitting here, you listen to you guys, and I'm like, I guess I do whatever the gods ask me to do. Like, isn't that what you do what the gods ask you to do? I think that's the key right there. And sometimes that's usually me being cold and my feet hurting and me running to and fro from festival grounds and stuff like that.
It's very interesting that the nerdy warlock brings up the pain aspect, because in ancient Sparta, self-flagellation, whipping yourself, became the replacement for human sacrifice. So,
yeah, and on that note, I have done rituals with self-flagellation. That is a very powerful way to enter into some kind of trance state. But you really have to be careful with that, and of course, you can get into a lot of detail about that probably. But along with that, I've also gone through a period where I was performing a ritual Crowley wrote called the Mass of the Phoenix. And so part of it is you with a burin, you create a mark upon your chest, and then you take the cake of light and put your your life essence on it from there, and then consume it. So it's like through that suffering, you're creating the Eucharist.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think that, since tonight's show, like I said, if you're just now tuning in, tonight's show, the theme is kind of like Ramadan. Thank you for joining. We talked about fasting. We're now talking about sacrifice. It's a very common thing during Ramadan to sacrifice something. So whether it's sacrificing smoking cigarettes or drinking alcohol or drinking soda, we all kind of talked about what sacrifice looks like in our practice. So, kind of like what I was saying, like if someone is like, oh, I'm going to sacrifice Diet Coke, like I don't even drink Diet Coke. But if someone is like, if I say like, oh, I'm going to sacrifice smoking cigars, like that's a sacrifice for me. But if you don't smoke cigars, that might not be a sacrifice for you. And once again, we have a lot of new people tuning into this live stream. So welcome to my channel. My name is Jasmine. I talk about Sehir primarily, which is Arabian style conjure magic. And this is the first day of the holy month of Ramadan. And so this show is based off of that. So in lieu of Ramadan, our next topic that we're going to talk about as witches is charity is the next topic. Charity, being generous. So does charity play a role in your spiritual practice? And if so, I would like to hear how you practice charitable acts or good deeds for your practice. So do we all agree on charity or?
I do charity. I do a lot of charity. I'm giving away free bras right now. I have a 501c3, and I routinely take donations that the church gives us and invest them into charity events or opportunities, and then I share that with the needy people in the community. But I run a church, and so it might be a little different. If I didn't run a church, I would probably donate to a church and wouldn't be so big in charity. But we've had charities, like last year we did this thing called Pillows for Everyone. We had a charity drive where Bed Bath & Beyond gave us a donation once a month, and we gave out bedding and towels, whatever they gave us. Right now, we're raising money to build Demeter's Holy City, which is a $2.5 million project. And so if you want to donate to that, we have a GoFundMe. It's called Demeter's Holy City. And I'm constantly doing charity, because when you have a church, it's about doing what you can to make the world a better place, and gathering up resources to share with those who need a lift up, so that they can also be a contributing member of society, because everybody wants to be to reach their potential.
Yeah, absolutely. Charity is, I find it's an important part of the work, especially, I work with La Santa Muerte. She's a very, I guess, equal opportunity spirit, 'cause death comes for everyone. And, she's typically called upon by very marginalized people in Mexico or along the border. You'll find everyone from people who walk the night, i.e. prostitutes, or drug dealers, that will call upon them for protection to, repress minority groups. There's a homophobia problem in Mexico, so gay people will be murdered. So, gay people will walk with her. And so a big part of, I guess, not the biggest part of my practice with her, but is always remembering those who she walks with, and remembering to be kind to them and to help them when they need help. Someone asks you for a cigarette on the street, you give it to them. Do not try to charge them a quarter for it, unless, it's some guy in a business suit, hey, give me a smoke, acting all entitled. So yeah, and just small acts of kindness, and just statistically speaking, the people who make the most money tend to be the people who also give the most of their money away. It just seems like there's some kind of universal give and take with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up, I grew up in a very conservative Jewish household, and one of the things that we would do are what's called mitzvot, which is acts of kindness and charity for people, which is it's like your duty to do it as a good person with God. And so that I've always grown up with that idea of helping others as being connected to being at one with the spirit in whatever way that you find that. And so through the work that I do, I really try to put out as much free content for people as possible as one aspect. I also really love donating my paintings to, if someone's having an auction to raise money for someone, or for some charity, or for a lodge or something, I'll donate my art so they can sell that and get some money from it. And then also it helps just, spread that creativity to some other people. But I really think that once you start connecting with the spirit, which is what we've all been talking about, you realize how everything is connected. And so very often when something is coming to you in those regards, it's trying to teach you something, and you never know, what is an angel in disguise, for example.
Yeah. I think growing up here in Alabama, charity is every day. That's just how you're raised. You treat everyone with kindness, and if someone needs anything, it doesn't matter if you know them or if they're a complete stranger, you give it to them. So if I can't wear my clothes anymore, or if I have a duplicate of something, I'm not going to just toss it aside or try to sell it. I'm going to try to find someone to give it to. I'm always giving things away all the time. And, if you see your neighbor outside, maybe you've never spoke to them, but you just say, hey, I just made food. Did you want a plate? Are you hungry? It's just a thing here in the deep South. That's just a thing. So it goes beyond magical practice for me. It's just an everyday thing. Why wouldn't you be charitable to fellow humans? Because we're all struggling. But then in a magical context, if you are in my inner circle, in real life, I'm constantly going to be kind of let me balance your chakras for you. Let me do this reading for you. Like, let me do magical service for you. And you don't have to do anything in return. Just let me do this for you. Yeah, but charity, it's just, it's woven into the fabric of my everyday life. So.
Right on. Right on. Yeah. Like, you know, during Ramadan, you practice your good deeds. So good deeds, you know, might be something as simple as, like, let's say you're in the line at Starbucks and you pay for the person behind you. Or let's say that you're at the market, you're at the grocery store, and you see, you know, an elder struggling in the grocery store. Maybe you help them and you push that cart for them, or you open the door for them. Or maybe it could be something as simple as, like, you're in oncoming traffic and you allow someone to cut across your pathway when you're driving, instead of, like, not letting them in or not letting them cross. So acts of charity during Ramadan can be something as simple as that. It can be monetarily and financial. We did have someone, by the way, Bella, ask earlier about how they could donate to Demeter's temple. I think you're muted, babe.
I hate it when I do that. Do you want me to get somebody to put a link in the comments? Would that help?
Yeah. And then also too, like, I already said in the comments, like, I will make sure that all of my guests' links are linked down in the description, but that will probably be after this is no longer live. So if you're looking for the Nerdy Warlock, Yuri, Orly, Belladonna, if you're looking for their links, you will find all of their links in the description of this video, most likely 24 hours from now. Okay. But yeah, Bella, if you want to post that link in the comments, that would be great.
So it's Dusty's doing it. It's the GoFundMe is Demeter's Holy City dash New Eleusis. And thank you so much.
So our next aspect, if you're just now tuning in, welcome. Tonight we are doing Do All Witches Think the Same, which is a live show where we have witches around the table and we talk about whether or not we agree or disagree. And I personally am theming this live show after Ramadan, the holy month. For me, you know, I am not Muslima. I do not walk that path per se, but it's more cultural for me. And so practicing Ramadan isn't necessarily like a religious act as it is a cultural act. But as a witch, because I'm a witch first, as a witch, I find magic in Ramadan. I find magic in the fasting. I find magic in the sacrifice. I find magic in the charity. And I would encourage people who are, you know, watching this. I have a lot of people I know who come from more of, you know, a Christian background, who it's like communion or Easter or Christmas. You don't necessarily have to follow that particular denomination to incorporate magic into that ceremony. And I think that for me is like the sacred blasphemy of it all. Like, on Facebook, I was talking to a girl recently who was taking her communion, like, and she's not Christian, but she is currently a minor, right? And under her family's kind of authority. And so she had to do this, but she feels like she is a witch or pagan or non-Abrahamic. And usually I don't like to really advise or counsel minors. That's just kind of for my comfort level. But I saw this on Facebook in a Facebook group, and I encouraged her to think about, I mean, we don't necessarily, in Islam, we don't really have something comparable to communion. So I've not done that before, but I encouraged her to kind of think about, you know, if you're eating the body and drinking the blood of your Lord, maybe think of that as like a commitment or a devotion to nature or to your own personal understanding of the higher power. No one has to know it's not Jesus. No one has to know in the church that you're not devoting yourself to Christ. You could devote yourself to whatever, right? But okay, before I start rambling,
I actually have a really good point to add on to what you just said, Jasmine.
Go ahead.
So when I was 12, I had my bat mitzvah, and at that point I was already like this. So I went through the ceremony and I just allowed myself to go through it as another experience of life, as an opportunity that was given to me to see what it would be like, to see if I did like it or not, because I didn't know what that spiritual experience would be like for me. I went through it with an open heart, realizing it wasn't for me. And then out of that, it didn't affect me in any kind of negative way, but I have the candlestick holders that the rabbi gave me in the ceremony, and I have them, and I use them on my altar for my magic now. And so I'm really grateful that I went through that, because it allowed me to transcend it into my own blasphemy and hereticism, which I think was fun. But especially when you are young and it's your parents doing it, you don't have that choice. So it's better to, exactly what you're saying, turn it into a spiritual experience for you, because no priest or anybody can like tell you what's going on inside you while that's happening.
Yeah, exactly. And per Arabia and per like Islamic kind of culture and conversations, there's like a very popular phrase that is like, that's between you and God, right? So like whether you are practicing Ramadan and you break your fast, or you're trying to give up smoking, or you're, having relations that may or may not be appropriate, which none of that is necessarily what I believe, but I'm just saying per this live show talking about this perspective, there is a big kind of cultural idea that like basically that's between you and God, means that's none of my business. So like if you choose to dedicate yourself to Hecate during communion, that's between you and God. That's none of anyone's business, is what I'm trying to say. But okay, so our next point here be prayer. This is a big aspect of Ramadan. And when you are fasting during Ramadan in this holy month, we have thawab. So basically all of your prayers during your fast are multiplied. So while you are fasting, you pray throughout the day. And because you are making a sacrifice, there's this idea that your wishes or your magic or your satir or your prayers will be amplified because you're making a sacrifice. So to kind of make this into a statement per the show, is prayer a part of your practice? And if it is a part of your practice, if prayer is, how would you define prayer, and what does that look like for you?
I can go first. I pray. I pray all the time. I'm always connected to deity and in prayer. I pray to the Great Mother when I wake up and when I go to bed. Sometimes I pray to other deities as well. I feel like prayer is when you talk to Goddess, and meditation is when Goddess talks to you. I believe that rituals are moving prayers. Spells are tangible prayers, and that anytime I'm sending energy up to the universe, it is a form of prayer. Great Mother, help me find my shoes. It's going to be.
Right. Yeah, prayer is absolutely a huge part of my practice. Like Belladonna was saying, it's your communion or communion with the spirits, however you define them, and it's a chance for you to open up your heart and express exactly what's on your mind, and like whatever. It's your time with those spirits, and with working with Santa Muerte, people make a big deal about all these offerings that you put on the altar, but really the offering she wants the most is for you to spend your time with her and pray with her and not be afraid of her. And for me, that was hugely transformative. And then also from just hanging out with Mexican grandmas and like doing the rosary with them and seeing like the miracles they manifest in their lives just through this simple repetitive prayer. It's very deeply meditative, and you these visualizations during it because you're supposed to visualize the mysteries as you pray. It's a very transformative experience, and it's become a crucial part of my practice. And even if you look at these old grimoires, they say like invoke this, and like back then, invocation and prayer meant the same thing. It wasn't until you get the Golden Dawn and like some bad Latin interpretations where you get like this idea of invoking is calling the god into you, and evoking is bringing them outside of you or whatever. It was always prayer and invocation meant the exact same thing until the late 1800s.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting points to bring up as well. And so, yeah, absolutely, like exactly what Yuri was saying. As devotees of Santa Muerte, we offer a lot of prayer to her. We also pray with a lot of different spirits, and it's a combination of both things that have already been written and then prayer from our heart out loud or silent. But that is the time when the creative aspect of you comes out and communicates to the spirit. If it's too easy, if it's too quote unquote mundane, it loses the art behind the magic. And through prayer, we are allowed to connect in sort of a poetic way with the spirit, and that idea of using prayer as a sacrifice by really offering everything we have through whatever methods of communication we can. It's definitely quite noticeable, and it's not necessarily something that has any kind of bounds. Like, for example, months ago, we were going through some prayers for necromancy, and we were praying to Mary outside of a church near where we live in New Orleans. And a lady from the church asked Yuri and I if we wanted to go in and pray in the chapel. And she let us go in and pray our necromantic rosary in the chapel. It was a beautiful experience, and that was in a church. But it was still the power of prayer, and the spirit it's literally everywhere. I'm sorry to rhyme, but it is.
I did not realize that I was going to get so emotional listening to all of you. Prayer is like very important in my practice. And I guess I'm realizing how important it is right now as I've been listening and the question was posed. I've never realized how much I do pray, but I pray a lot. All the time, every day, in the morning, at night, before I eat a meal. Like, I have all of that ingrained into me from the way I was brought up in the church I was brought up in. I was raised Christian. And so prayer is just something you do, and it's so personal. It's so like highly, highly personal for me. And yeah, it's a way for me to, as you kind of said, Orly, it's almost like a method of like sacrifice and offering. I think that at least for me, when I approach a deity and I'm praying to them, I'm being so earnest and I'm offering up such a high level of emotional intensity, be it good, bad, stagnant, whatever. I'm offering up something so earnest and so pure, I feel. I feel like that's an offering, that's a sacrifice. And when I am approaching a deity that I kind of want to work with, but I've never approached them at all, rather than doing a ritual or lighting a candle, I'll just say a prayer and be like, hey, are you listening? Like, what's up? What's good? Like, I'm interested in you. But yeah, I have a lot to undig now. So, but yeah, prayer is super important for me.
Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, I mean, during Ramadan, you know, there's this whole aspect that, you pray at the beginning, you pray during, you pray at the end. At the end, when you break your fast, you pray again, you have a big party, da 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 da. However, that takes us into our next one, which would be celebration. So, celebration through the lens, talking about Ramadan, Muharram. At the end of Ramadan, we have Eid. So it's like a big party, a big celebration. It's the end of Ramadan, the end of the holy month, gift exchanges, da, 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 whatever. So, how do you, and I know that asking which is this is kind of crazy because, like, I think as witches, we like celebrate everything. Like all the time. Like we celebrate ourselves, we celebrate other people, we celebrate astrological events, we celebrate all types of things. But in terms of your practice, what does celebration look like? What foods do you eat? What drinks do you drink? What activities do you have? What does it mean to celebrate, to have a spiritual celebration? I know that's kind of like a very open-ended, vague kind of question, but I don't know how else to ask it. But celebration, Eid, is a big part of Ramadan. So as witches, how do we bring celebration in? I would like to hear from the guests.
I guess I'll go first this time. So in the Lima, once again, in the Book of the Law, it states a feast for the elements, rituals for the elements, and feasts for the times. So the idea is like for the equinoxes and solstices or other great, elemental changes. The feast for the times are like significant days, like anniversaries of something, and you celebrate by like having a big party and a big feast. So that's how I was taught through my traditions on how to celebrate things.
Yeah, I was going to say, from like my exposure to like Latin American traditions and especially African traditional religions, it's all very community based. So that celebration, it's a community get together essentially, where everyone comes together as one and celebrates the spirits and the miracles they've received. And so for me, I guess the celebration is essentially, it's a community get together, more or less.
Yeah, celebration. Oh my gosh. So I'm a very theatrical person, like theatrically minded. So like makeup and costuming is really big for me in terms of celebration. So like there are certain types of like makeup looks that I will do for particular like Sabbats. So like Beltane's coming up. I'm gonna paint myself to look like a plant. Like I'm gonna have green skin. It's huge for me to do that. And then there's also foods that I eat only on certain occasions. So like Beltane, like Samhain. I will eat certain dishes that I make only at that time of year for that day, for that purpose. And that helps. I don't know. It's just something special, as a way of celebration.
I'm like, I wished I had longer answers, but the only thing I can think of is that we celebrate just like everything else. We just do it with intent. I mean, we have special foods that we eat at special times. We have dances that we do. I like to dance naked around a drum circle. That's one of the ways that we celebrate that other people don't. Maybe we go camping and run around topless in sarongs and things like that. There's definitely a culture to paganism where we celebrate a little bit more freer and a little bit different. But I think that the thing that is more, we do it with intent. We do it with an ecstatic offering to our gods and allow them to experience the earth plane through us.
So, okay, so our last one And we are coming close to an hour here. I try to keep the shows at about an hour, but we have one more. So the last one is holy places, physical spaces on earth in the physical world that are considered to be sacred or holy for your practice. Are there any for you? Are there not? I mean, what physical places on earth, what cities, monuments, statues, do you feel like hold sacredness to you in your practice? And if you disagree, you can turn your camera off. And if you agree, just stay on. Okay, we all agree. We've been agreeing a lot tonight. I like that. That's fun.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me personally, like the whole city of New Orleans is, it's a sacred place. I moved down here when I was 18, full of ideas from, various books and stuff. And I was very excited about the idea of getting involved with voodoo. It's been 15 years later and I still haven't, but I found other African traditions that spoke to me even more strongly, that initially popped up when I was looking for voodoo, coincidentally enough. But yeah, no, this the whole city. It's culture, the atmosphere here, the cemeteries. I mean, especially the cemeteries. Those are like probably my like high holy grounds, I guess. But that's because necromancy is such a important part of my practice. Whether you're going to a god or an angel or some kind of chthonic or demon spirit, whatever you want to call it, like they typically work through the dead. Like they just send or at least in the traditions that I've been brought into, that's how it's explained. You contract out this spirit and they go find a dead person to go do it for you. So just cut out the middle person and it works a lot faster. So yeah, I mean, this city is just, the whole place is a very special, sacred place to me. I wouldn't be who I was today without it.
Yeah, the cemeteries here are definitely one of my favorite sacred spaces to go to. However, I also really resonate by going to any place that is sacred to people, regardless of what the religion or tradition is. I feel that as a sacred space for myself too, and will have some kind of experience there, along with also nature itself, and in particular being next to water, especially a moving body of water.
Yeah, nature in general, like untamed nature, like not like manicured, lovely parks, although those are lovely. I love like the wild, and especially bodies of water too. For me though, there are specific places in the town I live in that I view as highly magical. But my favorite place ever, probably if I were to live anywhere in the world, I would have to find something that is at least akin to a swamp or like a marsh. I feel so alive, like in a swampy area. It's just my jam. That's like when I just feel peak magic.
So the earth is our mother, and I find the sacredness in every place. But even a city, like there are the mother's everywhere. We established that sooner. But to say that also kind of pulls away from the fact that we need our holy centers so that we can come together and be mindful of it. I live on a river that is very sacred, and Mount Rainier in Seattle is considered a deity by the indigenous peoples because it disappears. It's really crazy. I mean, like there's a mountain and then there's not, and it's not hidden by clouds. It's a crazy phenomenon and I love it. Eleusis and Angkor Wat, the Giza, those are all personally very sacred to me. Although I've never been to any of them, I just look at the pictures and I feel my past, and it makes me feel connected to spirit and ancestors. New Orleans is a very sacred place to me. Rue Saint Anne and Marie Leveau's apartment, which I got to stay in one time. I had a really wild time. It was great. And then of course, her graveyard, her two graves, very sacred to me. Burial grounds of any kind. Also, what, Dusty? Memphis. That was the other one. Memphis, and then Nashville. The entire state of Tennessee. I don't know what that's all about, but they're flanked by holy places. You got a pyramid on one end and the Parthenon on the other end. I love it. Asheville, Salem. But we need our holy places. We need our temples, and they were all destroyed in the ancient times, and we're all working to bring them back, and recognizing that we need them is the beginning of having them.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that having sacred spaces in the physical, right? Because I think that we can astrally kind of project or astrally push our consciousness into the aether, and we can have sacred space in our mind's eye or in the astral. But I think being able to have sacred space in the physical that is permanent, that does not change, is very important. So during Ramadan, we have this whole aspect of the pilgrimage to the holy city of Medina and Mecca. So that's why I put holy places on here. So yeah, I think that this has been really interesting to do this kind of theme. It just so happened that this show happened to fall on Ramadan. So it's been really cool talking to all of you witches about these themes. And I think what's so interesting is that oftentimes witches try to really distance themselves from anything Abrahamic, anything Judeo-Christian, Islamic, but fasting, sacrifice, charity, prayer, celebration, and holy places, I mean, for the most part, all of these witches agreed that this plays, to some extent, a part in their spirituality. So while they might not be necessarily practicing Ramadan, they are kind of incorporating these aspects of fasting, sacrifice, charity, prayer, celebration, and holy places into their practice. So, yeah, I really appreciate all of you for joining tonight. The show is coming to a close. I wish we could stay on here longer, but we do have to end the show. It's been about an hour. But this has been so fun. And, I appreciate all of you for also entertaining me and entertaining this idea, because I know that, like I said, Abrahamic aspects can be very touchy amongst the witchy community because there's trauma and there's baggage. And for me, practicing Ramadan is, it's more cultural, and for me, it's okay, maybe you're a Christian, you celebrate Easter. You do it because you want to see your family. You do it because you want to have that connection, not necessarily because you're celebrating the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Ramadan can be a beautiful thing. And if there are any witches who practice that here, or any witches of Arabia who are watching right now, I want you to know that you can also keep your cultural practices and practice witchcraft. Okay? You can do both. So, does anyone else have anything else to say before we end the show?
I just want to say that, talking about pilgrimages, we just finished the pilgrimage to Eleusis. We do Spring Mysteries Festival, which is the ancient rites from Eleusis, from ancient Greece. It's the oldest pilgrimage known to man. It far outdates Mecca. And pilgrimages are also a very important part of it, because we dedicate. It's all about dedication and intent. And I think that when we poo-poo on the Christian practices, we know that Christianity took all of their stuff from pagan practices. So you're just shooting yourself in the foot. If you have one of those deep wounds, realize that it's people and not the spiritual practices themselves. You can still embrace your spiritual practices. Just get past the people, because everybody makes mistakes. I'm Belladonna Leveaux, and the name of the church is the Aquarian Tabernacle Church. I live at the world headquarters in Seattle, right outside of Seattle, and I'm very easily accessible on a lot of the social medias. If you look up Belladonna Leveaux, you can find me. It is wonderful to be here, and I love this practice. I love that you're sharing about how to incorporate the traditions that we grew up in into our spiritual practices, because hating isn't good for anything, no matter what you're hating on. You got to find balance in love.
Do either of you have anything that you want to add, talking about Ramadan, about fasting, sacrifice, charity, prayer, celebration, holy places?
Yeah, I mean, in regards to like the pilgrimages, it's a big deal in Mexico. One day there's a few, big famous shrines, and if she does something good for you, you'll make a pilgrimage there, and then when you get a certain distance away, you drop to your knees and you walk the rest of the way on your knees. So that's combining your pilgrimage and your sacrifice into one practice. And I just find the Culto de Santa Muerte like absolutely fascinating, very beautiful. So it's really, really impacted my entire practice.
Yeah, thank you, Jasmine, and everyone else.
Yes, thanks for having us.
Everyone said pretty much everything that I can think of at this time.
Warlock?
I don't really have anything else to add, but something that just came up from what we were talking about that I find interesting is, we were discussing, like, you don't have to throw away everything that you were raised with, right? It's not all bad necessarily. And so I come from a very, very specific type of like Protestant Christianity, the Church of Christ, which is one denomination of Christianity, but it's like very intense. And in it, though, one thing that's very good that I've kept with me all this time that I wish we would take as a country, specifically here in America, is the idea of true forgiveness, not situational forgiveness. I just find that extremely empowering. And that's just one thing that I have carried with me from that, is the idea of true forgiveness. And true forgiveness. So I just think it's a very powerful concept.
Yeah, cool. Right on. Well, thank you all again for joining. Okay. All the guests here are wonderful, and I will be linking them down below probably in like 24 hours. I'll get all the links that they send me, and you can find all of their links in the description bar of this video. So thank you for joining, and for everybody watching, like, thank you for joining as well. Like, it was super cool seeing a lot of like reoccurring faces and some new faces. And for those of you celebrating Ramadan, Marakbak right now, like, Assalamu alaikum, blessings upon you. And, you can do that and you can be a witch at the same time. So, mashallah. Leila Sayeda.